Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our cruise through the Leaves of Grass, the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We are in the Calamus section, and we turn now to a very interesting little poem, Behold This Swarthy Face. Now, we're going to comment on this later, but right away, if you have not seen many images of Walt Whitman, you need to Google image really quickly, Walt Whitman, and just take a look at all of the different pictures. Whitman, many have argued, some of his biographers have argued, he was pretty vain about his appearance, and he loved to kind of manufacture that appearance, and so we're going to hear something said about this here. Now, our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down the left-hand side there, Talks with Walt, and you've been working with us since the inscriptions. We're going to come to starting from Paumanok, and the lines from starting from Paumanok in a bit, all the way up through and including the last text, City of Orgies. Our Nortons, to give us a little bit of background information, tell us that Whitman improved the 1860 version of this Calamus number 13 poem by omitting, for the next edition, the opening two-line stanza, quote, "Mind you the timid models of the rest, the majority, question mark, long I minded them, but hence I will not, for I have adopted models for myself, and now offer them to the lands." Now, this idea of accepting yourself as artist and as poet will be one of those kinds of reasons that we will read a poem like this. I want to go, though, to starting from Paumanok, passage 15, and I just want to remind you of this passage. He says, "With me, with firm holding, yet haste on. For your life adhere to me. I may have to be persuaded many times before I consent to give myself really to you, but what of that? Must not nature be persuaded many times?" And then he says it about himself. "No dainty, dolce, affacioso. I, bearded, sunburnt, gray-necked, forbidding, I've arrived to be wrestled with as I pass for the solid prizes of the universe. For such I afford whoever can persevere to win them." This idea of wrestling we talked about when we met this passage. We'll now read this poem, and what is it that he has to say about himself? Behold this swarthy face. By the way, this is the only use of swarthy in all of Leaves of Grass. These gray eyes, this beard, the white wool unclipped upon my neck, my brown hands, and the silent manner of me without charm. Yet comes one, a Manhattanese, and ever at parting kisses me lightly on the lips with robust love, and I, on the crossing of the street or on the ship's deck, give a kiss in return. We observe that salute of American comrades, land and sea. We are those two natural and nonchalant persons. Now, we don't normally pay attention to much of this idea of kissing as it relates to the biblical text. But in the Bible, of course, in the Christian New Testament especially, the idea of kissing as it relates to, of course, Judas and Christ in the garden, and as well saluting one another with a special kiss, is mentioned in many of the lines that are Pauline texts. And that makes this reading even that more interesting when we get to it. Notice we begin with the word behold, as in to look. And of course, that's been the injunction all the way through in Leaves of Grass. In other words, learn how to look. This is what great poets are always reminding us about, right? We have to learn how to look. He calls it a swarthy face again. It's the only time that this word gets used. These gray eyes. Now, he loves this word gray. We'll have seen it. We saw it, obviously, in the starting from Paumanok, passage 15 that we just worked with. And then the beard, obviously, it makes us think about Song of Myself, passage 5, reaching up to grab the beard, right? And he calls his beard the white wool unclipped upon my neck. Whitman, at a very young age, already had a very white beard. Many will call him the good great poet, as he's called, of course, by his biographies as well. But he had this long kind of flowing, many call him kind of look like Santa Claus or something, right? So he loves to talk about his beard. I told you that beards are always a major part of our reading, as is hair, and that takes us back, of course, to our study of Milton's Paradise Lost. We've given full lectures over all of Paradise Lost, but you'll remember Milton was very much into hair. I think Whitman learned as well something from his Milton about that. And then he goes to his hands. My brown hands and the silent manner of me without charm. Now this is interesting. It's as if he's identifying himself as one of the unsophisticated, maybe we would say drivers that he loved to sit up on those trams, as we've said, that he liked to. He says here, I'm kind of normal. I don't have a lot of charm. Yet he will point out, even though on none of those, sophisticated things, a Manhattanese comes one, a Manhattanese, and ever at parting kisses me lightly on the lips with robust love. And I, on the crossing of the street, we'll get to crossing of the Brooklyn Ferry later, right? Or on the ship's deck, give a kiss in return. And then the word we gets used twice here. We observe that salute of American comrades, land and sea. And that makes us immediately think of Song of Myself, passage 46, 47, where we are working with both land and sea. And of course, we also have that dynamic between two that become we. We are those two. It's important to take us back to without charm. Natural and nonchalant persons. In other words, normal people. So for Whitman, notice, he's going to argue that the artist is that individual that assumes both the sophisticated as well as obviously the unsophisticated. And the use of the word comrades, as we've seen in the Calamus section, and the use of American. I told you, he doesn't use the word America or American very often in Leaves of Grass. When he does, I hear America singing, for example, it's a big deal. Now, obviously, the poem will suggest at 2a that the artist must be proud of where she or he comes from, obviously who she or he is. I love the word choice at 2b of Swarthy. It's fun to think of the ways that he comes up with these words. He looks in the mirror, behold, he looks in the mirror at himself and he says, I think the adjective for me is swarthy. It's an interesting choice. At 3a, I mentioned starting from Palmanock, passage 15, and the images of Walt Whitman. You'll want to take a look at all of those amazing images. He intentionally had a number of them. He was very interested, obviously from the very beginning in the original version in 1855 of Leaves of Grass, of having a certain kind of look, the drawing, the image that's there provided at the very beginning. Obviously you can Google image it. Finally, at 3b, and how we're going to own a poem like this, well, I don't know. How would you describe yourself? If you get one adjective, for Whitman it was swarthy. If you get one adjective to describe yourself, what would that one be for you and why? And then finally, are you pleased with your appearance? Whitman seems to suggest here, you should be proud of the way you look. You should be pleased with who you are and the way that you look, regardless of how well it seems to, compare to others. Whitman is going to embrace the idea that you are beautiful in your own way. Of course, Whitman saw himself as swarthy and beautiful. I hope you're enjoying this reading and study. Thank you.